Hi everyone, we're waiting 2 to 3 minutes before starting the webinar to accommodate for the rest of the attendees who are in the middle of connecting. Also, please note that our presenter today will be conducting live polling. To submit your answer, please use the address that will be at the top of the slide, presenting slide. And when prompted for the screen name, please enter your name.
Valon, I do need to say it can be anonymous. It's fine.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Valon, should we start?
Yeah, we'll start here in a few seconds. Just let me finish this posting of the links, and we'll get it here. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for being part of our community. My name is Valon Kolika, and I will be your host for today. Just a few reminders before we start the webinar. If you have issues viewing the stream at any time during the presentation, and you are using the web browser version of Teams, please refresh your browser. If you are using the desktop app of Teams, please exit and rejoin. Hopefully this should troubleshoot your technical aspect of webinar experience. And please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared publicly. We will post the recordings on our community at aka.ms/security-webinars. And during this time, please feel free to ask questions at any time by typing them in the live event Q&A window by clicking on the Ask Question button. Be aware that any questions you post will be publicly visible. However, if you prefer, you can post your question anonymously by checking the box right below where you enter it. Now, we often get many questions on these webinars, and we will do our best to respond to all of them in real time. In the event, if the answer was not provided, or if you may have additional questions post this event, please don't hesitate to raise them on our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel community. If you're listening to this after the fact as a recording, that's also a great place to ask a question. We love to hear your feedback on how we can improve these webinars, and please do so at aka.ms/security-webinar-feedback. And while you're there, you can also join our community by visiting aka.ms/security-community. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss any future webinars or major announcements. On our community, you can speak directly to our engineering teams that create our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs and get early access to changes by doing things like participating in private previews which you can sign up for that at aka.ms/security-private-preview. And while you're there, you can request features, give feedback, review our product roadmaps, attend in-person events, hopefully to come soon, or join webinars like this. We believe that the best way to improve our products is by removing any barriers between you and the people that create them. So we hope you'll join us. In today's session, Ofer and hopefully Andrii here will go over on how to use Sigma to accelerate your SIEM transformation to Azure Sentinel. Ofer Shezaf, as many of you know him from the previous presentations, is our principal program manager from a Sentinel engineering team. And our guest will be Andrii Bezverkhyi, CEO with the SOC Prime. Without further ado, I will turn it over to them. Ofer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valon. As usual, great to be with you all. Have a great day wherever you are, which is a good way to start polling you. We'll use polls later on for more substantial questions, but to start with, if you can go to the URL at the top, polyv.com/sentinel, and just click on where you come from so we can all see where you are from in the world. I think that it's a good way these days to make the world smaller and less, well, alone. So who's going first? polyv.com/sentinel.
Also, for your convenience, the audience, I have posted the same link on the chat room. So.
And I'm starting with that because afterwards you can keep to the URL and the rest of the polls will be at the same place. So the next ones will be more to the technical point and also easier to get to. Thank you for whoever came for Turkey. It's pretty late for you now. Though that said, it's the same time for me. I didn't mention it, but I'm from Israel. Oh, and of course, in India, it's even later. Thank you all. Amazing to see people from all around the world. I know that we are not having the best time for people from Australia and New Zealand, and you have to go for the recording. We need to do something about that. You can keep going. I'll get back to that at the end, though it is shaping out nicely. And let's move on to a bit more, and I'll have one more survey before we hit the material. First of all, this webinar is part of a webinar series. The URL here is important. That's where all the URLs that Valon is helping me do, as well as helping others to do, are concentrated as a single curriculum for learning more about Azure Sentinel. And if you are here but you lack a background, and I'll talk about things which are too advanced, you can probably go there and ask questions, and you can ask them on the chat window as well. The chat answer would be shorter. Going to the training would enable you to have a more in-depth answer. Now, before I move on, I want to learn from you. We described the webinar as a webinar about using Sigma in order to accelerate your adoption of Azure Sentinel by converting rule from your current SIEM. And I wanted to know, what is your expectation in one word? So one thing I can already see, Sigma and Sentinel stand out. That's an easy one, but I want to go to the other things. So use cases, that's important, of course. Queries, things that automating should help you. Tax, SOC, SIEM. I'm trying to pick other things. Anyways, integration, well, makes sense. Thank you for that. I'll keep that. And let's move on into the agenda, which is packed and full. I'll talk about Azure Sentinel. I'll say a few words about the product itself for those that joined because they want to learn about they knew about Sigma and know nothing about Sentinel. Then I'll describe two areas that are relevant from Azure Sentinel to the current webinar, which are the rules. After all, we are converting rules from Sigma to the Azure Sentinel rules. So I'll present to you how they look like and what they include. And then I'll talk about integration. We'll see that when we talk about Sigma, we'll talk about two things, two capabilities. One of them is converting Sigma rules into Azure Sentinel. And then we'll also talk about the capability to deploy those rules if they're part of the SOC Prime service directly to Azure Sentinel using integration. So I'll talk about integrating with Azure Sentinel. I'll then give the presenter position to Andrii. We have a technical difficulty, so I hope he'll be here on time. If not, I'll talk about it, and he'll talk about SOC Prime. He'll talk about his company, which is the world expert on Sigma conversion. It's also one of the only, if not the only, company focusing on content for SIEM products. He'll also talk, of course, about Sigma rules. He'll present them. He'll explain what they are, and then he'll move into talking about the meeting point, the integration. One thing that you could see in the previous survey was that Sentinel on the one hand, Sigma on the other hand, and integration are the three topics. So at the end, the last part, we'll get to the conversion part. We'll show and demonstrate how to convert rules using Uncoder IO, which is a free service provided by SOC Prime to help you facilitate that, and we'll demonstrate that. And we will also show how to deploy SOC Prime rules directly to Azure Sentinel. So, Azure Sentinel. What is it? Many of you came because you know Sentinel. For those that know less, I'll spend 4 minutes on that. Azure Sentinel is Microsoft Cloud Native SIEM. It's rather new. It's been GA since October, so a bit more than 6 months. It's very successful. We have way more customers than I imagined when we started the journey. I personally joined Microsoft a year and a half ago. I came from the SIEM world. I came from ArcSight. When I say it's a cloud native SIEM, it does raise the question of what is it. So I do want to mention that it's specifically very suitable for monitoring the cloud, naturally Microsoft Azure, but also other clouds. But it is certainly also a full-feature SIEM covering on-premises as well. It has all the set of connectors and on-prem plumbing to enable it to be a SaaS service serving your on-prem workloads as a SIEM. Why Azure Sentinel? So a lot comes from being a cloud service. As a cloud service, it has infinite scale. You can pump as much data as you want into it, and you don't have to tell us about it. No VMs that we have to set up for you. It's built on a lot of Azure technology that auto scales itself, and you don't have to worry about it. You have 100 gigabytes per day. 100 terabytes per day. You can still send it in. You don't need an architecture workshop to design how many CPUs you need. We'll take care of that, and you don't have to worry. It also has a very effective and well-integrated SOAR. SOAR is the upcoming buzzword in the SIEM world. Automation is meant to reduce the cost of running your security operations. And there are great SOAR tools on the market that are usually not an embedded part of the product. For us, SOAR is part of Sentinel. If for nothing else, because all the technology we use is part of the Azure ecosystem. So even if it's not directly part of Sentinel, we integrate it well, and the integration is very, very seamless. We do see that our customers are moving very fast from collection to analytics to automation. Azure Sentinel is a data lake, so you don't need now two different platforms, one to manage your data and one to run correlation rules. You can do it in one platform, which makes life much easier. And lastly, we also provide you with built-in detection content, which is based on Microsoft research. The close to 4,000 people that are protecting you anyways when you use Azure. A word about more machine learning. Our goal is to take the same technology that we developed in order to monitor Azure, which is used to ingest a huge number of events and distill them into a very low number of high severity incidents, which a correlation rule can never do. That said, I do want to mention that today we'll focus on correlation rules, which are also a capability. You can define your correlation rule. We provide detection rules also in the form of correlation rules, and naturally, Sigma rules are translated into correlation rules. But I wanted this slide to mention that that's not the whole picture. We do strive to provide you with built-in machine learning-based detection. We also work to not just provide scale and machine learning, but also innovate the way you do security operations. We introduced this very interesting graph-based investigation tool. That's intended for the analyst to spend less time investigating an incident. Within it, we have added a URL detonation feature that automatically uses threat intelligence and a detonation engine similar to what you have with safe links in Office 365 to understand every shortcut URL, what really is behind it. And as mentioned, we have a graphical designer for creating automations, which enables a very easy implementation of playbooks. So that was well, I promised 4 minutes. I probably did 5 minutes about Azure Sentinel. With that in mind, I would like to ask you, which SIEM do you use today? Which one is the one you want Sigma to support you with? Converting from, or I don't have to be that optimistic, converting to. You may want to convert from somewhere else to your SIEM. Keep in mind that in this case, you can vote for what others already wrote. You don't have to type in yourself. Great, Sentinel, thank you. It doesn't have to be, of course. One of the things that I'm learning is good about the new Microsoft is that we are not an isolated company that thinks about itself. We are very open, and if you look into something, you'll see that all around. Do I see anything surprising here? Not really. By the way, as an anecdote, before I move to the next slide, I'm not really allowed to say Sentinel. Whenever I say Sentinel, I get somebody slapping my head behind the back because I should say Azure Sentinel from legal reasons. That's the full name. Anyways, thank you for that. I'll move on and I'll talk about Azure Sentinel rules. The rules are what you actually convert Sigma to, so they're important. So we have a feature, we call it analytics. It consolidates all the detection capabilities. There is a rule type in the middle. It can be not just scheduled queries, which is the way we call our correlation rules. It can also be machine learning or fusion, etc. You can choose from pre-existing templates. I think we're in 150 by now and working fast to create more of those. You can search, and if you found the right one, you can check that you have the right sources and create it. Naturally, when we talk about Sigma conversion, we talk more about creating one from scratch. You want to create your own rule. To do that, use our rule creation wizard, which we'll go through step by step because it will enable you to understand what Sigma converts to, where is the Sigma conversion implemented in Sentinel. So the first thing that you define is a meta information. I'm pointing to the Matra attack tactic because a Sigma rule would have a tactic and a technique, and those will be converted to the Sentinel rule. We are working to add technique also to Sentinel, as well as provide you with a more visibility around the coverage you have within the product. Next, you'll define the query. Both Sigma and Sentinel are query-based, which means that conversion tends to be good. It's very different than, say, ArcSight and QRadar, which have a different way of writing rules, which is event-driven and less compatible with Sigma. Not that it's impossible, but the conversion from Sigma to Sentinel is more straightforward. The query here is the core of the rule, as well as the main thing that will be converted from Sigma, though not just that. For example, we have entities, and to the extent that entities are available in the Sigma rule, we'll discuss Sigma mapping later on, those will be converted as well. You also have to schedule the rule, how often it runs, how far back it looks. It's also information which is on top of the actual logic of the rule, and it's something that the Sigma converter does not set default values for you that you may want to modify. We'll see that. We'll see the process. The process will allow you to convert and then edit the results. And lastly, something which is beyond the scope of Sigma rules. Sigma rules do not get into automation. It's an interesting aspect. Think about Sigma as an open source project, and as a community, we may want to extend it, just as the SIEM world is shifting towards automation. It's interesting to think about more standardization also in the world of automation. So, with this in mind, another survey for you. One thing that I'll take off the SIEM, the Microsoft persona, and wear the SIEM guy hat now. And one of the things that I always find challenging about SIEM is that it can do so many things, and you may want just some of them. For example, it can focus on detection in a specific area. It can focus on incident management. It can focus on incident investigation. You may be mostly hunting. And I would really like us all to learn more, and this time it's sort of, I think you'll benefit from the results as well, to learn what others are doing with their SIEM. So if you type in your use case, we can all share and learn about what others are using with their SIEM. I think those are very good mix of answers. I'm aware, of course, that many of you are doing more than one thing. It's not just one thing, but it still shows that either because you monitor different environments, or because you have different threats, or because your focus is different. You may be focused on hunting, for example, and while other organizations don't do that, it may change. Actually, that's too interesting, but I need to move on. Let's see what's below the line. It's probably already string. MDR, that's a nice one. Oh, below the line, the long one. Also very important. Thank you very much for that. Anyways, I'll move on. In the last few slides about Azure Sentinel, I'll talk about integration. If the last part was about rules, because that's a precursor for the discussion of Sigma rules and conversion, the integration is preparing us for the discussion about the integration between SOC Prime, rule marketplace, and Sentinel, which we'll get to later on. So integration. Azure Sentinel is a cloud service. As a cloud service, is very much API oriented, and anything can be done through an API. I'm personally a big believer that we need to move from UX to API in everything we do. It also serves the goal of being a data lake. It means that you can get the data out and do whatever you want with it. It's not just there for correlation. So you can get to Azure Sentinel a lot of stuff. User information, resourcing for threat intel, and you may want to send out the data to a secondary system, for example, for longer term storage, for doing your own machine learning on it, or because you have another SIEM that you want to share the data with. You also want to get out data which is generated by Sentinel, such as incidents, in order to further analyze or integrate it with, for example, a ticketing system. How do you do that? So if we start with focusing on the data ingest, there are two ways to it. The first one would be to push. It's your typical connector technology. Of course, we have our own connectors. I did not list them here. But if what we do is not sufficient for you, you use our data collector API, which enables you to send custom data to Sentinel. It can be events and it can be any other type of information. Because Azure Sentinel schema is free, no form is required. It's valued but not required. You can send files if they help you, and there are ways to process them within. We also have a specific, more structured ways to get threat intelligence in. I would point specifically to Sticks and Taxi. You can get any Sticks and Taxi threat intelligence source connected to Azure Sentinel. You may want to pull information into Azure Sentinel. So there sits there, nobody sends it in, but you still want to get it in. The API would be still data collector API, and you'll use one of the available tools that use the API to go out to the database or RESTful API or file and get the data. The reason it's important to show this one up is because pulling does only require a processor or VM. We're in the cloud, and in most cases, you'll want to use something like Logic Apps or Azure Functions in order to do this integration. As mentioned, you may also want to get the data out. It also can be push or pull. For push, it's something which is upcoming. It's already in private preview. We are starting to offer the capability to stream information out of Sentinel to initially storage, Azure Storage, and later on also to event hubs that will enable you to get the data to wherever you want it being open. And you can also pull information from Azure Sentinel using the query API and get the data to wherever you need it. However, all that is less relevant. It's important, it's useful, but less relevant for the integration with SOC Prime. The SOC Prime rule repository called TDM integrates with Sentinel, we'll see it later, by automatically deploying rules to Azure Sentinel. That calls for our interface for management automation, which enables you to do everything you can do for the UI also through the API. This helps you to do things such as deploy rules, manage the status of the rules, manage incidents, add comments to incidents, or even from the outside change the owner of an incident. I'll skip that because I took too much time to be frank. Valon, is Andrii on?
Andrii is on, and we can check his sharing capabilities. Andrii, can you hear us?
Yes, I hear well. Can you hear me?
Perfect, yes. You want to try to share something so we can see if that's working?
Yes, absolutely. Can you see PowerPoint?
Yes, you're on.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Just one reminder, Andrii, when we get to polls, I'll grab back the screen for just the slide of the poll. Okay?
Sure, sounds good. So yes, thank you, Ofer, for the introduction. I'll pick it up right where you left off. Just a brief intro about SOC Prime, and then we're going to dive into Sigma rules and how to apply them to Azure Sentinel for more security use cases. So yeah, a quick summary about SOC Prime. We're pretty much in the business of finding threats easier through marketplace models. So this is where we provide rules, queries, parsers, dashboards for augmenting SIEM and EDR capabilities of service and threats, because we see that SIEMs and EDR send tons of signals. And yeah, we now finally have a framework to benchmark the capabilities, which is called MITRE ATT&CK, of course. So big fans of Sigma. We first started in 2017 when it was invented by Florian Roth and Thomas Patzke in Germany. And as you know, Sigma is open source standard. Its primary repo is hosted on GitHub. And we collaborated a lot with the Sigma community to improve the backend, so translations to different SIEMs and EDRs, most prominently Microsoft Sentinel. And yeah, as of today, there's a lot of content on Subprime TDM. Most of it is Sigma rule derivatives. However, we also make some native SIEM content, so rules, parsers, dashboards, and so on. We got mentioned by Gartner last year, but the most important part is that, yeah, if you want to check out those rules, there's multiple ways you can do it, starting from GitHub to our landing page we have to community access and ultimately to commercial access. So that being said, let's go more into technical things. One thing important is to mention, so as a content company, just like, like in any other industry, we're not aiming to create all content ourselves, and we are running threat bounty program. So just like in software development world, you have a bug bounty for finding vulnerabilities, SOC Prime ran a program for a bounty for developing detections, right? For any latest exploits, attacks, and so on. We launched it last year in May, and as of today, there are more than 200 people who actively participate, and we've been doing payouts for almost a year now. So that's a very important part of SOC Prime as a company. And yes, I think we are off to Sigma description. So Sigma as a language, it provides several benefits. So first and foremost, it is for log files, for Snorvos for network, and the arrays for files. So pretty much creating detections really easily using a notepad, if you will. No need to access the live SIEM where you're working with on detection. Also supporting the analytics and reuse. So pretty much if you make a Sigma rule and the threat resurfaces all over the world, you can reuse the rule in any organization as long as you have the log source, a data source, and you have a SIEM in place, right? And the logic of the SIEM rules is different from Sigma rules is different from the SIEM. So we're not to be reliant on particular SIEM language. It's kind of meta language where one language to rule them all. And as you can see, it's supported for different SIEMs. So it can be supported for search-oriented systems. It can also be supported for the full correlation engines like Azure Sentinel, or we can also use it as queries for EDR, for example, Microsoft Defender ATP. So a lot of applications to get more signals, to find the latest threats, to find exploits, and even something there for starter SOC use cases. So I saw in the previous poll a lot of cases mentioned. So depending on how much time we have, I'll be happy to show what Sigma can find for lateral movement and fail logons and all of that. That being said, I think the next slide is a poll. Ofer, over to you.
Hey, Ofer, can you hear us?
Sorry for that. I was trying not to interrupt you. And here we go. I'll try to make the transitions smoother. I was answering questions. Yeah. So guys, and thank you. Since we are talking about Sigma, I do want to understand, for us to learn where are you with your Sigma journey. And if because you use Sentinel, we got you to look into Sigma, we are happy. Anyways, please go on. I tend to think that we got a picture, and Andrii, you'll have to consider the information here when you move on, and you probably should take the screen back.
Okay, thank you all for this. I'll proceed. Share the screen again. Okay, so
I'll remember to go through the slides on my screen as well, so I'm at the right place.
Right. Yeah, I'll be switching now between PowerPoint and some live examples. So yeah, pretty much I saw that 5% of people already are familiar with Sigma. That's great, and some people are considering, and for others it's a new thing. So pretty much example of how Sigma is created. You can see the code on the right, and that's example of a detection rule created by Florian and Tomoelchi to address NotPetya, right? This one is actually using sysmon logs, and as you can see, it's mostly based on command line and images, right? So instead of detecting malware by hash or by IP, which can be easily changed these days, this rule will be more persistent and more specific to the threat. Only having sysmon would allow you to detect this threat.
Hi, Andrii, sorry to interrupt. Can you just zoom in a little bit into the code?
Yes, of course, and thank you for saying that. I'm just going to do 150%. Yeah, is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Yes, so one example is NotPetya, another is Lokibot. So actually to take a look at the rules, why don't we go to Sigma official repository, which is located at GitHub, right? So this is the URL. Just you search GitHub Sigma, you will find it easily. And here we have some more examples. So in the rules folder, you would have the rules sorted by category. And then you can select, let's say we're looking for something along the APT attacks, and then we see here, okay, APT silence, EDA. And this is how the code looks like, right? So there's the name of the author who has created the rule. In tags, you can actually tag MITRE ATT&CK, tools, and actors and techniques. And then the detection can be created here. So the core part is log source, the detection, and then you can have also a condition. So it says which one of the detection components are we selecting, and you can also have a logic like and or not, and also list false positives and additional metadata. So it's very important to say where the rule came from, what was the source research. The good practices include here, for example, link to sandbox analysis or external threat intel, and so on. So there's plenty of rules here on GitHub, and you can also, aside of the rules themselves, you can also find the source code for the Sigma converter. So Sigma converter is what translates your rules from YAML to your favorite SIEM language, right? And these are more examples of how rules look in YAML. And in terms of supported conversions, there is a full list somewhere here. Yeah, so I think it's supported targets today. We have also just released support for CoreLight and for multiple other systems. There's like community is really doing a lot of work and a lot of effort to support more and more systems, right? So it really becomes a universal language. And SOC Prime will also contribute a lot of code there. So that's the core Sigma repo. One thing we just launched, as I know, 2 weeks ago, the page was down for some reason, so we decided to make a mirror. So this one is updated every 24 hours and has the same structures on GitHub, and it's hosted on SOC Prime. It's free to use. It doesn't need a registration. What it does show you is you can search for Sigma rules really quickly. Let's say you're looking for particular CVE, or you're looking for, let's say, Linux rules, and it instantly refilters the repository for you online. And you can see the code of the Sigma right here. What you can also do is you can translate. So let's try to see. In one click, I just click translate and it creates for me a rule compatible with Azure Sentinel. Or I can also create a query for that, which will be, and you can copy and paste it to Sentinel to search. So that's pretty much a clone of the repository, and that's still open data. Other things we do is actually creating private rules, which are not TLP white, as you say, but rules which are for detecting latest threats and latest APT attacks. That's what distributes to our marketplace. And coming back to slides, we actually, let me make it full screen now. Or actually feed the screen, right? So the example is here is that we support 5 key use cases on security and TDM, which is the marketplace for detection rules. So I'll walk through 5 of those use cases now and also demonstrate the integration. So number 1 is level 1 SOC analyst, right? So if you're just starting with a SOC and you just got a SIEM and looking for initial rules to like tackle different threats, it could be something as simple as SSH brute force or something as advanced as attacks targeting Zoom and Microsoft Teams, right? Distributed malware, which we saw, 3 weeks ago. So pretty much, let me show how this looks in TDM. So here I am already authenticated to our platform and already pre-filtered the rule sets by Microsoft Azure Sentinel. You can see there's like almost 1,600 rules to dig through. So there are several ways to explore them. So since we're talking about level 1, let me actually copy and paste the query, which actually excludes a lot of content that is not level 1. So let's say we exclude threat hunting rules and APT rules and just show what would be the content that's understandable for somebody who have just started working. So sorry, I'll have to press it again. And I now filtered all the rules with the filter to exclude like APTs and so on. What I also need to do, I need to select Sentinel as a platform. And we will end up with a subset of rules which I can deploy to my Azure Sentinel level 1. The way it works is that if we see this rule over here, we click view, we will drill down to the Sigma language or to Sentinel language since I selected the platform, but we can also export Sigma code right here. So that's how the raw Sigma looks like. Again, you can see this one is actually using Windows security logs, so event ID 4688, and looks for the image names and has the full metadata there. So the integration we have with Sentinel is actually a button to deploy the rule right in your Sentinel API. And for now, I will just click it to see that it works. And before deployment, of course, you can have multiple APIs and multiple instances. We'll work through integration setup a bit later. But pretty much before deploying, you can also set up the rule parameters like here. So let's say this says 12 hours, I can do maybe 4 hours to 24 hours. If I click deploy, it will connect to API and it will return to me feedback saying, okay, the rule has imported successfully. So I will now click here to drill down to our test Sentinel environment. I would need to sign in, and the rule we're deploying is Zoom and Teams malicious distribution detection. So you see we drill down to analytics, and I should now sort the rule by last modified. And yeah, here we have, let me make it bigger, Zoom and Microsoft malware text.
I think that's exciting. Thank you, Andrii.
Thank you. Yeah, it works, and yeah, it's been a journey to make it all work. But pretty much, yeah, you can now deploy rules in one click as long as you configure the API access, and then you can further manage it inside Sentinel, right? You can edit it and assign the actions that Ofer mentioned. So you can, yeah, set the logic. You can link it to automated response, you can do review. It's all there. And yeah.
I do want to mention, if you think about it, it's a very important advantage of a cloud native SIEM, because then you can use the APIs I mentioned before to auto deploy from sources rather than download and install as you do in most on-prem SIEMs.
Yep. Yep. All right. So continuous with agenda, we will be looking. The next would be the cloud-based security cases. So as you know, a lot of companies now are using cloud in any way, shape, or form. And last year, MITRE has released their MITRE Attack for Cloud. So we have a filter here saying on cloud technologies, we can select, let's say, AWS, Azure, Active Directory, Azure, GCP, Office, and SaaS. And our platform would be Sentinel. So let's see what we got here. And in result, we have 106 Sigma rules, 238 total rules, 36 techniques. That's not unique technique coverage. Unique is 28. So I just double checked before our webinar today, but pretty much covering, yeah, a big part of cloud. And if you can see here different rules, so you can have like G Suite data that can be, detecting the attacks, or you can have.
Now, Andrii, can you talk about what's free, what's not free, how people can access that, etc.?
Sure, absolutely. So let's actually work through all of that. So first of all, Sigma is a standard, right? It's an open standard, and as long as you follow its license GPL, and the rules have the rules detection license, so it's open, right? All the rules that are on GitHub, again, the license permits you to use them free of charge. So as long as it's on GitHub, yeah, exactly what it says. As long as you follow the license, they're free to use, right? And there's, I would say, most of the rules, there's quite a lot of community rules over here, right? So probably around 1,000. If we go also for the difference between Sigma repo on GitHub and Sigma repo on SOC Prime, it's the same rules. The only difference is that we add some additional functionality here, like inline translations. So speaking about translations, before launching this page, we have a project called Uncoder, right? Which is probably a later out presentation, but I can probably say that Uncoder is just a translator for Sigma rules, where you can post a Sigma code, and then you can select, let's say, Sentinel query, hit translate, and sometimes it does translate, sometimes it does not. So depending on the type of the query, we're still perfecting this project, but there's plenty, I think, roughly 500 rules here pre-configured, which isn't translatable to Sentinel. Yeah, so this is a query translation, and this is a rule translation. Uncoder is also a free project. It's also private, so it doesn't track you. So you can log on and paste rules, and it will translate, and we don't log the actions. That's the second item that's free to use. Coming back to Threat Detection Marketplace. So again, we have a community access. Actually, we have 8,500 people using the marketplace, and 98% of them is using the free version. So you can register with your corporate email address and use community content. Like on this search I did on the cloud content, you can see these 3 buttons over here. So 222 rules are paid, and then in this case, 16 rules are community, right, for cloud. So a lot of cloud stuff is being made paid, but it doesn't mean that for every use case you only need to stick to paid rules. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the rule is paid or free. If it's a good quality rule, you should not distinct. So there should be no big distinguishment. If we think about other use cases, so let's say with cloud, you saw most of stuff is paid. But if we think about, let's say, Active Directory security and Windows log. So we have this filter called via audit, which we use internally to mark the rules which work with Windows event log and Active Directory event log, which is again very useful to find different attacks and useful for environments where you don't have an EDR or sysmon, or maybe to monitor Active Directory, because Active Directory logs are usually not read by most of the EDRs. So for via audit rules, there's 46 rules over here that are available. There's also a possibility to track latest threats. So actually, as you can see on the right, we have rule metrics. So rule metrics tend to help the analyst to select which rules are more usable for level 1 and which rules are usable for threat hunters. So simply put, actionability score 3 would mean this is level 1 material and it's a good candidate for starting case, while pain index would be like David Bianco's pyramid of pains. The higher the pyramid, the more it's about TTP and it's more loose logic, so it's good for threat hunting. So most of the rules are tagged with these metrics now. And if I would select rules to tackle the latest threats, I would select, I would deselect the actionability 3, and I would select high pay index 2 or 3. And then, yeah, then we can take a look what is most popular. So as you can see on the top, so unusual logon failures is quite a popular rule, but also suspicious commands, which is a free rule over here, also has a lot of downloads. And I just clicked on it and drill down again from here for deployment. Overall, let's take a look. So for threat hunting, there is more, again, a lot of community rules, also a lot of paid rules.
Andrii, I just want to mention that we have a few minutes before we want to go to question and answers. And people, I want and people asked for you to demonstrate, to show how you configure the integration.
Okay, great. So let me quickly answer that. So the integration is configured over here. It says Microsoft Azure Sentinel API. Once you click on it, you need to set up client ID, client secret, tenant ID, subscription ID, and resource groups. So pretty much here we set up SOC Prime test instance. You actually have multiple tenants. So if you are running MDR or MSSP company SOC, then you can have as many tenants as you want. So, and you can push different rules to different tenants. So for example, some of them will have one kind of log sources, another will have different threat profile. If you need a guide how to get those credentials, there's an article on Microsoft website, I believe, and also Subprime blog, and also embedded in TDM as well. So step-by-step guide, how do you get client secret and how do you get the tenant ID. So well described in here. Yeah, that's what you set it up once, and then it's automatically picked up for when it deploys the rules. That's really quick summary about it, but I think we also have more details in the slides. Okay, anything else I can address before we jump into Q&A?
You may want to talk about the mapping. I think it makes sense.
Yes, so on the mapping, I'll actually point to an article we have about it. So the fields customization, we have an article on Subprime blog. Pretty much overcoming the schema challenges is one of the things when deploying rules at scale, right? And as you know, yeah, different SIEMs use different schemas, and you may have data in common event format sent to Sentinel from ArcSight or from tools that provide set format. You may have Splunk feed into Sentinel using common information model, Elastic ECS, and so on. And the difference can be that the fields that is configured in Sigma by default can be a different field in your example. As you can see here, left and right does not exactly correspond to each other. Like destination host name here doesn't have a space bar or a dot, and here it has one. So you can set up once which fields you are using in your environment, and then in TDM, you will be converting rules on the fly to your schema. So instead of having to rewrite every rule, you can set up again multiple mappings if you run multi-tenant, and it will, as a converter in TDM, will on the fly translate to your custom schema, right? In TDM, there is a UI and API connector for usability reasons and for scalability reasons, but the core functionality comes from Sigma itself. So in Sigma, you have backends, which allows you to actually configure that in command line and configs, right? So there you can configure your custom schema as well. And here you can see there's a field mapping parameter. So pretty much what TDM does, it configures it through UI and also makes sure that it connects with Sentinel's API without any errors. And yeah, I think we went through most of the slides through demo. I don't know if there are any polls left to run, but I pretty much demoed everything I wanted.
So there are a few polls that we have jumped through. I'll take presenting just to show the last slide or two.
Okay.
So first of all, we wanted to make sure you know where to go from here. Andrei, thank you very much. We ran through a large number of links that are available here and will be available when Valon puts online the presentation. Uncoder IO, which Andrei mentioned, is a free-to-use, no registration needed tool for converting rules. It works between different platforms. My experience is the coverage from Sigma to others, naturally, Sentinel is good. Between one SIEM and another, less so, but it works sometimes also for that. And you have the other links that Andrei mentioned here. The one I want also to mention, which we did not discuss, is the Azure Sentinel corresponding rule repository, which might be interesting as well. That's if you want to convert from Sentinel to another SIEM. Hopefully not, but it's possible. Lastly, there are a few questions out there in the chat. Andrei, I'll let you go and pick a few of those. I remember one because I'm showing that, so I can't type in your questions here. The advantage here is that you can vote for the questions of others, so we'll know what are the questions that are really top of mind for you for picking. Make yourself visible here. One question I remember from the chat window, Andrei, is about automatically deploying multiple rules at once. Is it possible, coming, something you thought about?
Yes. So I think we have also on the call here Alex, CTO, Alex Brihin on the call. He can comment more detail on that. But yes, I know that we have already, as a backend logic developed for that, we just need to add an UI button, and it will be possible to add multiple rules at once. Right. So it's a feature that's requested by a lot of managed security service providers and MDRs. Pretty much, yeah, because there's hundreds of rules now developed every month, right? So managing them at scale in an agile manner becomes very important.
So the answer is coming. That's great. That's another one that actually was there. Thank you for whoever copied that, and it's a good one. I did not know how to answer. Andrei, Alex, are there any? It's a Sigma question. Are there custom metadata sections in the Sigma rules?
Yes. So to give you an example, in Sigma rules we have MITRE ATT&CK techniques listed and tools. Right. When we port that content into Sentinel, tactic gets mapped directly, but technique goes into a generic field with the metadata. So you can also have some additional, let's say, internal knowledge base reference link, or you could have external sandbox link in there, right? Sigma allows to kind of embed URLs into references, so you can add additional data there, and it will be transferred by translation.
By the way, we got a question about whether there is custom metadata as in tactics for Sentinel, and the answer for now is no, but we are learning. We are learning for Sigma, so we'll take your input. I know the answer for this one, but I'll let you answer. Can you deploy to multiple tenants?
Yes, multiple tenants, yes. With the API configuration I was showing, allows you to configure as many tenants as you want, and then you can have different rules deployed for different tenants. The question is also question at SOC Prime, do you consider to adapt it from MSSP's protections there into actual property? So actually Sigma as a standard is all about the author, right? If you look at any Sigma rule and its license, it really has a lot of common with Creative Commons license, right? So the author is always the owner, right? So respectively, if MSSPs are creating their own rules and they want to publish them on the marketplace, yes, the author retains their own authorship. That's what it says in TDM EULA, and that's what it says in Sigma license. However, we're speaking to a few MSSPs about customizations that they're made, and that may require a discussion how do you make it possible, because not necessarily every customization you make can be visible to the world. It can be customer specific. So with the goal of making better security, we want every customization visible, right? So the rules are better. So there's a balance to be struck, and there are some things we have in the roadmap to address it from MSSP. So sort of a private content hosting portal running on Git protocol, which can be connected to global TDM. And I mean, you can already set it up yourself today if you use Sigma repo and use a GitLab to have your own rules, which maybe are not public domain.
So just to answer, first of all, you sort of jumped between the first and the second question here, so you answered both. You'll make it possible to use your portal to export to GitHub?
Yeah, so you can export rules from our portal through API, right? And from API, you can put it to external repos that you use.
I see, GitHub instead of Sentinel in this case. Okay.
For example, yes.
Okay, and by the way, those that don't know, we already have a framework for using GitHub as for CI/CD for Sentinel. So it's the full story is probably doable. We probably need to make the framework to document how to do it. So thank you for the input here. Let's see if there are other questions here. To get trained upon Azure Sentinel in the role. That was too long, for example. That one is big on me at this time of the day. I don't know that we have today great training per role for Sentinel. The Ninja training did try to provide initial take on general training. I also wearing my SIEM expert hat. For a SOC engineer, the training is pretty much about Sentinel. For a SOC analyst, it's partially about Sentinel. We start getting into that. There is a section or two in the Ninja training that are about how to use Sentinel as an analyst, but a lot is about the workflow in your own specific deployment. And is there a plan to build and maintain security package for essential rules and policies out of the box which can help? So this is, of course, a question that's both to you, Andrii, and to me, and I'll ask you first about that one, the last one on the screen.
So actually, we were debating this just this morning in SOC Prime, and it's a question: do we do packages or do we do rule subscriptions, right? But because pretty much there's already a lot of Sigma rules that can be essential content, and most of them are community access. To create it into a package, that's something we can do. So. Technically, it's possible. The question is, what is the best approach? Packaging is kind of traditional SIEM approach, right? You have a package for network threats, or package for, certain, for Office 365, for example. But it's the question that since rules manufacturing around is now agile, the package also needs to be maintained. So almost advocating making a framework a subscription, which is then updated as new rules become available, right? The only requirement would be not update production automatically, but have a pre-prod. That's our take on it.
So I'll add the Sentinel, I should say Azure Sentinel point of view here, and we have just 1 minute, so that's probably the last one. We have an out-of-the-box rules. They're pretty comprehensive, and we'll keep updating them, and that's what we expect you to start with. That said, I'm here talking with you, co-presenting with Andrii, because we believe there's always room for more, and that SOC Prime is doing a great job of creating way more rules. And we also know that you will write your own rules, and you may want to use Sigma as the common denominator to start with. So as much as I'm in favor of having out-of-the-box essential rules, my experience in the SIEM world is that you always have to go beyond that. So with that in mind, given that it's time, I would like to wrap up. I want to say thank you to Andrii and Alex that also was here to answer questions, as well as to the Microsoft team answering your questions. Christopher Romeo is one that I specifically noticed. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope that you'll successfully use Sigma to convert rules to Azure Sentinel and the SOC Prime rules as well. Any more questions, ideas? Valon will now provide links to where to go. Thank you, Valon.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, guys. There's already, I'm just echoing all this feedback that instant feedback that is there. They love the integration. Awesome job. So just before we conclude, some reminders, although I have already posted on the chat room here on the next scheduled webinars that we have, that is on Sentinel. So June 2nd, we have learn the KQL you need for Azure Sentinel. And then June 15, we have deploying and managing Azure Sentinel as code. And then June 23rd, we have multi-tenant investigations. And again, for details and registrations, you can always go to our one-stop shop place where we also keep the recordings and everything. That is at aka.ms/security webinars. And in case we missed your question, or if you guys have additional questions, please visit us, our Azure Sentinel forum at aka.ms/Azure Sentinel community. Thank you, Andrii and Ofer, for a great presentation. And thank you, the rest of the team who helped answering the questions. And of course, most of all, I want to thank all of you for being part of our community, for joining us on these webinars. And we hope to see you next time. Goodbye.
Thank you.